I want to talk about society, social skills, relationships, and this is coming on top of a worldwide pandemic in which our very social structures have radically been affected in terms of a lot of countries, certainly my country, have went into lockdown. Well, in the case of the UK, we're easing up now. Shops are open again, restaurants are open with social distancing measures, but the coronavirus pandemic has significantly impacted the whole world. Um, and I wonder to what extent that's also impacted people's social lives. In the UK, we've seen a phenomenon with a lot of young people having large parties and gatherings, and the police have had to bust them up because obviously they break the social distancing rules. But we've also seen another side when there was lockdown. Sadly, the mental health side of that was really profound. And although I understand why the lockdown needed to be strict, I think that medical people can overlook the mental health side of that. It's eased now, thankfully. But I said at the time, like back in March, April, when the lockdown was very strict, that it would have a very big impact on young families maybe living in a tower block, for example, or single people for that matter. Now, I've been living by myself for about 4 years now. Um, so you might think the lockdown deeply impacted me. I have to say it wasn't too bad. I Whether it was because I kept up quite a consistent social media communication with friends, I don't know. But I was quite fortunate. It didn't get to me that much. But I know that some people out there, maybe it did impact greatly. And maybe it still is to some extent. I mean, depending on what country you're in. I've just been watching Friends, the popular sitcom from the 90s and the 2000s. And I like Friends. I was a big fan of Friends. But one thing that kind of always got a little bit on my nerves about Friends was they tended to be a little bit, how can I put it, high schoolish in the humor insofar as social life was concerned. So, the six friends would always have a relationship, or the periods where they were single. There's kind of a stigma thing there, like, oh, Ross, you've been single for 3 months or whatever it was. But I'm thinking that's nothing. That is absolutely nothing. Um, And don't get me wrong, I'm not being PC about that. I loved Friends; it was a great series, but they were a bit unrealistic in some of the scenarios. Um, but it got me thinking. I made two videos, three videos, in fact, about the subject of, to put it plainly, virginity and sexual relationships around that. There was a lot of replies on one video I made, which is entitled "The Reality of Involuntary Celibacy." I uploaded that in May 2017, so just over 3 years ago. It got a lot of responses, over 5,000 views, and a lot of responses. Um, Apologies if you left a comment on that video and I didn't get back to you. I must have got busy at the time, or I do apologize for that. I've replied to a few now. Some interesting feedback there. A few people misunderstood me. They thought I was saying that that was my situation at the time. It wasn't. I lost my virginity late, but when I uploaded that video, it wasn't the situation. I wasn't a celibate at that time. Um, so I guess I just want to update this and kind of talk a little bit more about the subject because, particularly in Western society, there is a huge amount of pressure. I feel there's pressures in every society, but in Western liberal democracies, there is a pretty relaxed attitude for the most part to relationships. And whilst very conservative societies can be very shackling because there's a lot of puritanical attitudes, especially to young women, Very liberal societies can have their own problems insofar as there's more peer pressure because there's kind of this stigma put on people who are deemed to not have had much relationship experience. And to be honest, it angers me. I think it's one of the nastiest, cruelest forms of bullying, and that's really what it is. I experienced my fair share of it. Um, but people jump to conclusions about this thing when they really don't know what they're talking about. So they'll assume that if a man, in particular man, is a virgin, oh well, he must be a weirdo. He must not like women, or he must be a real nerd, or something like that. Um, it's very judgmental, but there's a lot of factors as to why people are in that situation. Yes, certainly confidence is a big part of it, but sometimes someone is actually, it's not that they're utterly lacking in confidence. There may be other restraints, like financial restraints. If you want to meet someone, more often than not, it does involve money because if you go out clubbing, that's money. If you go on a date, that's money. There's a lot of factors there. So if someone is struggling financially, maybe they're unemployed, maybe whatever other reason they're struggling, that's going to be a limitation. Um, and yeah, confidence is something that is a factor as well. I struggle with both things, to be quite candid. But they're much less of a problem right now. Right now, my issue is my social life is lax, but I'm not too depressed about it because I think that it's temporary. I really do. Let me tell you a story. I met my last girlfriend unexpectedly. I really want to reach out here to people who are maybe struggling with loneliness, solitude, and not by choice. They're very unhappy. Firstly, I have been there. I I don't underestimate the power that can have on someone's life in terms of really impacting you. So I have enormous, enormous sympathy with them. You could be 18, you could be 25, you could be 35 or older. It can happen to anyone. There's a few things to say about this. So, firstly, the story. My last girlfriend, at the time I was single, I had a girlfriend before, but we'd broken up. And I met my last girlfriend by accident. It sounds like a cliche, but this really was the case. I'd been helping a guy with some work, and so he invited me to a party as kind of a way of saying thank you. And he was quite a cool guy, he was quite international student actually, but he had a lot of contacts. He was a good-looking guy, he was quite cool. It was a cool party, very enjoyable party. I will always choose a house party over clubbing out. But anyway, started chatting to this young lady, and I instantly knew there was something there. I found her attractive, but there was a real mellowness to the way we were talking to each other, and it was really nice. This was in another city, and the next day I kind of said in passing, "Well, you've never been to my city before. Maybe sometime I could show you around." And I didn't really expect her to take me up on it, um, because I know my city well, and I thought some interesting things here. I'll show her around, whatever. And she was free that day, so she said, "Yeah, I'll come back." I thought, "Well, this is developing into something." So she came back, and we looked around, and there was a connection there. Now we didn't start dating immediately, but what really surprised me about that situation was it was so smooth. Uh, It was easy. It was actually easy. A lot easier than the first time I had a girlfriend, because on that occasion I approached her and there was a lot of uncertainty. She did kind of agree in the end, and we dated and it was very nice, but the process of this time was very smooth. Now in the long run things didn't work out, partly because of geography. She wasn't British, she had to go back to her home country, which was difficult, and there wasn't a possibility of us keeping up a relationship online, so it ended. The point I'm trying to make is that was a very nice relationship. We had a few small arguments, but it was mainly trivial stuff. And I've got mostly happy memories of that. I missed her desperately. I mean, it was very painful when she left. But the point I would make is I had the experience with her. I'm massively grateful for that experience, and it came unexpectedly. Now, I'm not saying everyone watching this will have that same situation, but I don't think I'm a particularly good-looking guy. I think I'm average. I would honestly rank myself about 5 out of 10 physical looks. On a good day, maybe 6 out of 10, but I I've never thought I'm a particularly good-looking guy. I don't think I'm ugly, but it's not something I put a lot of thought into. I frankly would care more about being physically strong, being able to defend myself, and having movie star looks. Um, but I look after myself, and I'm relatively confident. I have a lot of female friends, and one of the perceptions of men who are single is, oh well, there must be something wrong with them. That really angers me because it's just assuming that they've done something wrong, that their single status is because, oh, they must be a bad person or there's something wrong with them. People don't consider that people have different life experiences, and just because you found your girlfriend at 16 and everything was smooth doesn't mean that works out for everyone. And the same with women, the girl who seems to be maybe a bit shy, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with her. People are different. And I think when it comes to relationships in particular, people need to stop being so damn judgmental. I think the only time when there would be a justification for judging other people in relationships is if they are really sleeping around and paying no regard to other people's feelings, i.e., if they already have a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, especially, or if it's illegal, i.e., if the person's underage, that's obvious, it's illegal. But other than that, I really think people should mind their own business and not judge single people either. But I know what loneliness is like. It is profound. Someone actually wrote an interesting comment on that video I made. Said that a lot of incels, although technically they wouldn't be incels in this situation, they they go to prostitutes to lose their virginity, but they still don't feel satisfied. Now, he he opined that that is because they don't have the compassion and the intimacy, the human connection with a woman that would provide happiness. I think there's some truth in that. Um, I can't imagine having sex with a prostitute in one night and never seeing her again. It might be memorable the first time, but then when you do it lots of times, it just becomes, not to mention the fact that there's legal situations depending on the jurisdiction. But I can imagine that isn't satisfying. I haven't had experience of it because my first time was not that situation. So, but I would say this though, and feminists may not agree with this, but I think there's a lot of judgment of men who go to prostitutes. They're seen as pathetic, they're seen as um, immoral, you know. I think they should be viewed in some situations as in the same light as women who resort to sex work or men who resort to sex work because they're just lonely people who are trying to find that connection. And okay, others can judge it's not the right way, but I do insist that the need for sexual intimacy is an absolute fundamental human desire, and anyone who says it isn't are kidding themselves. Even if it's not for them, to judge others because they want sexual intimacy is ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. Now, obviously, um, there's barriers such as the need for consent. That's an obvious one, and not coming across as too desperate and sleazy. But I think the one problem that incel men face is the stigma. There is absolutely a stigma there. So if they talk about it, then they're portrayed as being obsessed by sex. And if they don't talk about it, it's, they have to deal with the loneliness. So when I made those videos, what I wanted to do was say, look, it's not stigma. This isn't some sort of men and women in this situation are not freaks. There's not something wrong with them. Maybe they've got challenges that they need to work on. Maybe in some cases there are personality deficits. Maybe they aren't the best communicators. But I really feel that people who've had more experience, let's say, for example, you find your boyfriend or your girlfriend at 15 or 16, and you've had 8 partners since then, and you're in your early 30s, then you've had a normal, so to speak, relationship life. I mean, I'm just, making those figures up just as a loose example. But what I'm saying is it doesn't mean they are better than other people. Really, really doesn't. It just means that their life circumstances have just worked out a little bit differently. They've just had more luck. It doesn't not mean that they're better people, or nicer people, or anything like that. Um, I mean, of course, you get men who are womanizers, and that's now a pejorative, and rightly so. If they're sleeping around and they don't care, they mislead women, then that should be a negative perception. But it kind of disgusts me how, being a virgin is such a stigma in the Western world. And I'm not talking about people who are that way for religious reasons, because that's a decision they've made. I'm talking about people who just haven't had the opportunities. And then, you get this whole macho culture, where you get a group of young guys, they're in a pub, and they're joking about how many times they've had sex, and maybe one guy is the butt of their jokes. If you're that guy, I would say reassess your friends. Really. You don't need that in your life. You don't need them to make you feel that way. Then you put on the false laughter, like you're part of it. Have friends that respect you, that listen to you. Because I tell you something, this is a serious thing. Suicide is the leading cause of death for young men, i.e., men aged between 18 and 45 in Britain. Now, that's staggering. And I'm not suggesting that it's all because of relationships. There's different reasons why people take that desperate step. Often it's financial problems. It's maybe there's a whole range of things, but certainly relationships is one of them. And if you have a young guy, or any guy for that matter, and he feels desperately, desperately alone, he's never had a girlfriend, he's not married, he doesn't have that much confidence with women, and his so-called mates are always taking the piss, then imagine what he's going through. If you are that man, let me just say, I was there for a very long time, a very long time. Things did change for me, but I know some people watching this might still be in that place. Firstly, if you've friends that take the piss, you need to lose them if you can, because they're not friends. Um, Secondly, please be aware you're not alone, in the sense that there are others out there who are in the same position. That might not be massively helpful, but it is the truth. And thirdly, sometimes life works in mysterious ways. Things do come when you're not expecting them. When I went to that party that night, I knew there'd be women there, but I wasn't actively seeking to flirt with anyone, and I certainly didn't think that would develop into a relationship, but it did. And okay, it didn't work out because of circumstances, but there's some very good memories with that. So all I'm saying is life's a long span. There may be a point in your life where you think it's never going to happen for me. It may come later for some people. Maybe for you it comes a bit later. So what? Came later for me. I'm in my mid 30s now, and I lost my virginity in my late 20s, and I'm okay with saying that. I really have confidence saying that because it's no one can hurt me. It's impossible. They might say, "Oh, you lost your virginity late. What a loser." But I did, and that's so what? I mean, if is that really worse than a guy who has slept with 50 different women and there's no sentiment there, there's no memories there. They just fall into one another as a fake sort of, oh, I've slept with 50 women. So really, no one has a right to judge others in this sense, unless they are hurting other people. But I just want to make it clear to people out there who are going through loneliness, as someone who really has been there. I've been desperately alone, desperately. The point of binge drinking. It can get better. It really, really can. I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not saying I'm an expert on this. But as someone who's been through it, life can be incredibly surprising. When I was at the midst of my loneliness, I genuinely believed it would be that way forever. I couldn't envisage a situation where it would change, but it did. Life works in mysterious ways, and you need to find a way that you can be happy waiting, or at least content waiting as much as possible. Believe me, I know it's easier said than done, but life works in mysterious ways, and I wish you all the best. Everyone watching this, I wish you all the best.